It's November 13th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's National Security Advisor pick. That is Florida Representative Mike Waltz, who is well known to be a critic of China. Trump is hopeful Waltz will pursue peace through strength and an America-first foreign policy. Bitcoin's record price rally continues, with the crypto now briefly surpassing the $90,000 mark. Investors are growing more confident that Trump will offer a more favorable regulation for cryptocurrencies. President Yoon is off to South America on Thursday for a week-long trip to Peru and Brazil to attend the APEC and G20 summits, which could possibly include a separate meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping and one with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. Donald Trump's decision to tap known hardliners for some of his administration's top roles indicates tougher foreign and national security policies, particularly in regards to China. Our Lee Soo-jin starts us off.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's picks for key positions signal a hawkish security and foreign policy stance for his second term. Trump on Tuesday local time named military veteran and Florida Representative Mike Waltz as his national security advisor. As a key aide to the president, the national security advisor plays a crucial role in shaping foreign and national security policy, which will be especially significant given that it will influence policies on Ukraine and Gaza. Trump in a statement said that Waltz had been a strong champion of his America First foreign policy agenda, and calling him a nationally recognized leader in national security, as well as an expert on the threats posed by China, Russia, Iran, and global terrorism. He also said that Waltz would be a champion of peace through strength. Waltz, a 50-year-old Florida native, served for 27 years in the U.S. Army Special Forces, also known as the Green Berets, and the U.S. National Guard, serving multiple combat tours in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and Africa, before being elected to Congress in 2018. Waltz's election indicates that the Trump administration will take a hardline stance with China, as Waltz has openly called China an existential threat to U.S. interests. And when asked about how Trump might respond to North Korea supplying Russia with weapons, he said that those shipments should be intercepted, also suggesting secondary sanctions on China and Russian energy companies that fund North Korea. Trump also announced on Tuesday that he has nominated 69-year-old former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee as the next ambassador to Israel, a position that requires Senate approval. Huckabee, a former evangelical minister, is a staunch supporter of Israel, previously saying that he has visited the country more than 100 times. The nomination comes as Trump pledged on the campaign trail to align U.S. foreign policy more with Israel's. And Florida Senator and China hawk Marco Rubio is being seen as a likely pick for Trump's Secretary of State, further adding to expectations that U.S. foreign and national security policy priorities will take a tougher stance on global conflicts. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's incoming cabinet is taking shape. Who has he picked for his second term in the Oval Office, and why them? We are joined by Chris Keskehel, Voice of America correspondent. Welcome back, Chris.
Good to be with you.
So, Chris, it looks like his new team is being made up of his loyalists, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's moving a lot faster than he did 8 years ago. And from the first appointment, we've seen Trump choose people that he trusts for influential positions. He chose his campaign manager, Susie Wiles, as his chief of staff. He chose Lee Zeldin, a congressman, to lead the EPA, or Environmental Protection Agency. Zeldin defended Trump during his first impeachment trial. He's also selected Congresswoman Elise Stefanik from New York to be the U.S. ambassador to the UN. She's been one of Israel's strongest defenders since the October 7th Hamas attacks, and become one of the strongest voices in favor of Israel in Congress. She also led those highly visible House hearings into how college presidents handled protests on their campuses a couple of falls ago. And it's worth noting that she wasn't always a Trump supporter. She voted against his tax cuts, but backed Trump in his 2019 impeachment trial. And this is different from the first time around when Trump butted heads with his key appointees, particularly those in intelligence, national security, and law enforcement communities, several of whom later recounted that Trump tried to get them to institute very controversial policies, but they tried to slow walk them or not follow his orders.
Right, and also included in the new team is Florida Representative Mike Waltz. We have to talk about him being picked as a national security advisor. Now, what do we know about Waltz and what kind of foreign policy is he expected to play?
Well, we know Waltz has been one of the most vocal critics of China in Congress. He serves on the China Task Force, and he sponsored legislation to restrict government funding from U.S. universities with ties to China. He also served on the Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. He's been broadly supportive of U.S. aid to Ukraine and its fight against Russia, but more recently, he's talked about walking back the sort of blank check approach that Trump has criticized the Biden administration with its support of Ukraine. Regarding North Korea, Trump's reported choice for U.S. Secretary of State, the top diplomat in his administration, Marco Rubio, has predicted a pragmatic foreign policy under the Trump administration, citing the need for adaptability in a world where countries like North Korea, Iran, China, and Russia are increasingly working together. And he said it's going to require a very pragmatic and wise approach about how the U.S. invests overseas and in what we do, he said in an interview with CNN.
Well, on top of that, Trump transition official Mark Paoletta has warned Justice Department staff against, so-called resistance. What is this all about?
Yeah, it's a warning to any attorneys or staff who plan to resist Trump's plans, whether it's pardoning January 6th rioters or commuting the sentences of those who have already been convicted. Something that Trump had signaled he was going to do on the campaign trail. So we'll have to see whether he follows through with that. Now, Paoletta warned that any of these employees in the DOJ, whether they be attorneys or staffers, who are not on board with Trump's agenda could face disciplinary action, including getting fired.
Well, the election is over and Trump will lead the country starting next January. What happens to his legal cases now then?
Well, there was a development today in that New York hush money case. A judge postponed a decision on whether to throw out that conviction in that case, and the ruling is delayed until next week so that prosecutors can suggest the way forward. Meanwhile, special counsel Jack Smith is evaluating how to wind down the cases against Donald Trump, the classified documents case, and the election interference case involving, January 6th. Because of the long-standing Justice Department policy that says that they're not going to indict sitting president, and Trump, for his part, has promised to fire Smith shortly after he takes office.
Well, all eyes are on Tesla CEO Elon Musk and his role in the Trump administration, and it looks like his presence is only getting stronger in the Trump 2.0. What's the latest?
Yeah, we just got word within the last half hour or so that Trump is tapping Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who was one of his rivals in the Republican primary, to lead what he's calling the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, as it's shortened to be,
right.
after Dogecoin, Elon Musk cryptocurrency. And this is going to be a kind of an outside consultant looking at where to trim government waste. And Trump believes that they can trim $6 trillion in government waste, and he has given them until July 4th, 2026 to do their work. But again, it's important to note that this is not an official role within the government. I mean, it probably is not going to be wise for Elon Musk to join in any official capacity because his stock jumped by $70 billion after the election. So, we're going to have to see what's going to happen with some of the contracts. We think he might influence EV policy with regards to how the U.S. pursues tariffs against China. We think he may have a say in those areas, but it's not going to be in an official capacity. The only official title he has is to lead this Department of Government Efficiency with Vivek Ramaswamy.
So many developments in the past week, and also more to come in the coming weeks. Kursk, thanks as always for connecting with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Now, Bitcoin carried on its positive momentum, breaking above 90,000 US dollars for the first time. But alongside the largest cryptocurrency by market cap, meme coins such as Dogecoin have also surged since Donald Trump's election win. Yising has more.
Bitcoin, the largest cryptocurrency by market cap, continues its winning streak, this time reaching another all-time high and surpassing $90,000 for the first time. According to US-based crypto exchange Coinbase, the price of Bitcoin briefly surpassed $90,000 just before 6 a.m. Wednesday Korea Standard Time, before falling back to the $88,000 range. Since the U.S. presidential election last week, which saw Donald Trump returning to the Oval Office in January, the price of Bitcoin has increased by about 30%. And it's not just Bitcoin and Ethereum. Meme coins have also been soaring since Trump's victory last week. Dogecoin has more than doubled its price since last week's U.S. presidential election. Another meme coin, Shiba Inu, has seen a trade volume comparable to that of Bitcoin. According to Upbeat, the combined trade volume of Dogecoin and Shiba Inu was 4 times that of Bitcoin. The recent meme coin rally comes as Tesla CEO Elon Musk has long supported Dogecoin. However, experts warn of risks involving meme coins, especially during an overheated market. 이승재, Arirang News.
Washington on Tuesday confirmed that North Korean troops deployed to Russia's Kursk region have begun engaging in combat against the Ukrainian military. According to U.S. State Department's principal deputy spokesperson Vedant Patel, over 10,000 North Korean soldiers have been deployed to eastern Russia and have begun combat operations alongside our Russian forces. Patel added that the Russian military has trained North Korean soldiers in basic infantry operations, as well as in the use of drones and artillery. President Yoon is departing for South America this week to partake in annual multilateral meetings aimed at promoting global interests, including trade and stability. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon covers what to expect from his week-long trip.
President Yoon Suk-yeol is set to embark on his first trip to South America on Thursday as he joins world leaders at the APEC summit in Lima, Peru, and the G20 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, while also being hosted by Peru for an official bilateral visit. While the trip was expected, a briefing on Tuesday detailed what to expect. After a flight of more than 24 hours, President Yoon will land on the evening of the 14th in Lima, local time. Official engagements start the day after for the APEC, and the APEC Business Advisory Council and CEO Summit will be on that day along with the first session. The APEC Summit comes as South Korea is set to host next year's APEC Summit in Gyeongju, Gyeongsangbuk-do Province.
In the first session of the upcoming APEC Summit, themed Empower, Include, Grow, the leaders of member economies will discuss ways to promote inclusive economic growth and support vulnerable groups. President Yoon will emphasize South Korea's commitment as next year's APEC chair to leading discussions on fostering a free and stable trade and investment environment.
On the 16th, an APEC leaders retreat in the morning will wrap up his APEC schedule. And in the afternoon, the official visit to Peru will begin as President Yoon will be welcomed by Peruvian President Dina Boluarte for a summit which will be followed by a joint press conference. Peru is the only nation in South America that South Korea has a comprehensive strategic partnership with, and the two nations are seeking to expand exchanges in the arms industry as well as the shipbuilding industry.
Peru was the second South American country after Chile to sign a free trade agreement with South Korea, and the two nations have since developed a close economic partnership as a gateway to the Latin American market.
After this, President Yoon will take off for Brazil to join the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro on the 17th. On the 18th, he will start his G20 engagements with Session 1, which Yoon will address global hunger and poverty, while during Session 3 on the 19th, he will deliver a speech on clean energy. And as usual, President Yoon is set to meet with participating leaders for sideline summits, with the leaders of Japan, Vietnam, and Mexico confirmed so far. An official at the top office also said that it's in contact with China for a possible sideline summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, while a trilateral with the US and Japan is also not ruled out. Meanwhile, when asked whether a meeting with US President-elect Donald Trump is possible while on the road for these summits, an official said it is true that they're maintaining close communication with President-elect Trump's team, seemingly not ruling out the possibility completely. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Employment in South Korea continued to rise in October, but at a slower pace than in the past few months. Data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday showed that there were just over 28.8 million people in employment last month, up 83,000 from the same month the year before. It's the first time in 4 months that the country's job growth has fallen below the 100,000 mark and comes due to a slowdown in employment in the retail, construction, and agriculture and fisheries sectors. The most prominent additions by sector were the healthcare and the education service sectors, which added the most jobs, and by age, those aged over 60 years old led the job growth. The Korean economy may see a rather sluggish growth this year and next year, with uncertainty over exports as the incoming U.S. administration under Donald Trump eyed tougher tariffs on all imports. Our Suneung tells us more.
The Korea Development Institute has predicted that South Korea's economic growth will slow to 2% in 2025, down from an earlier forecast of 2.1%. Data from the KDI on Tuesday show that although domestic spending is expected to see some recovery, weaker export growth will lead to the lower growth compared to this year. The institute also lowered its growth estimate for this year from 2.5% to 2.2%. The IMF and OECD still project South Korea's growth rate for this year at 2.5%. The institute explained the slow domestic recovery and increased uncertainty around exports to the U.S. due to the second Trump administration term are key reasons for the adjustment.
Domestic recovery is slower than we expected. Additionally, interest rate cuts were delayed, and the negative impacts of these cuts were greater than anticipated. The forecast for next year was further lowered to reflect concerns that export growth may worsen due to the Trump election.
The KDI also expects the increase in job numbers to fall from 180,000 this year to 140,000 next year. Consumer price growth is forecast at 1.6% in 2025, below the targeted 2%. While domestic demand may improve slightly, the KDI noted that construction investment remains weak, which could persist and present a risk. The institute predicted that South Korea's growth rate for exports will drop from 7% this year to 2.1% next year, anticipating a rise in U.S. protectionism. It believes that tariff barriers won't go into effect immediately, and that if tariffs are raised, this will likely start in 2026. Experts forecast South Korea's economic growth rate may not stay positive during the second Trump administration.
The second version of Trump administration stresses trade protectionism. The second Trump administration will focus not just China, but all the countries which have tremendous surplus against the United States, like Mexico, Canada, Korea, Japan, including China.
Dr. Shin said the exports are already showing a negative trend this year, and the growth rate may be lowered at 2.0% next year. Suneung, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the world with our Kim Xiang. Good morning, Xiang.
Good morning, Dami.
Let's begin today in China and a deadly car attack on the members of the public. What exactly happened?
That's right, Dami. A car rammed into a large group of people in a southern Chinese city, killing dozens, with the attack on a scale not seen in the country in decades. Now, 35 people were killed and over 40 injured by an SUV that plowed into groups of people exercising at a stadium in Zhuhai city on Monday night. Chinese police arrested the driver, named as 62-year-old Mr. Fan, as he tried to flee the scene. According to witnesses, Fan drove into the sports stadium at around 8 p.m. as people were exercising on the running track loop and deliberately ran people down. Police said Fan is now in a coma from self-inflicted wounds after he stabbed himself with a knife in his car before being arrested. Authorities also say a preliminary investigation suggests Fan acted out of dissatisfaction over a divorce settlement. Now, amid a nationwide outcry, Chinese President Xi Jinping said that all-out efforts have been ordered to treat the injured, adding there would be severe punishment for the assailant. The leader of the Church of England, Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, resigned on Tuesday following a report that the church covered up a prolific child abuser. Welby faced calls to resign on Monday after an independent review last week revealed that he and other church officers were aware of Barrister John Smith's abuse of boys and young men dating back to the 1970s. The independent review said that by at least 2013, high-level members of the Church of England, including Welby, knew about Smith's abuse of boys. Now, Smith was a British High Court lawyer and senior member of a Christian charity and reportedly abused more than 100 children and young men for decades, including in Zimbabwe and South Africa, where he died in 2018. The review also said the police were told of the abuse between 2013 and 2016, but church leaders failed to provide a formal report. A full police investigation was launched in 2017 following a Channel 4 documentary that revealed Smith's abuse. Global oil company Shell won an appeal against a landmark case in the Dutch courts on Tuesday, overturning a previous ruling that Shell must cut its absolute carbon emissions by 45% by 2030. The presiding judge of an appeal court in The Hague said Shell is already en route to meeting its emissions reduction targets, adding that Shell is already doing what the plaintiff, Friends of the Earth Netherlands, is asking. The judge said that while the oil giant has a responsibility to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it already achieved a 31% reduction by 2023, and that Scope 1 and 2 corporate emissions would be reduced by 50% by 2030 compared to 2016. The Aga Khan Emerald, a brooch gifted by Prince Sadruddin Aga Khan to his bride Nina Daya in 1960, was sold for $8.8 million at a Christie's auction in Geneva on Tuesday. Set with an extremely rare 37-carat emerald piece in the center, surrounded by diamonds, it was initially sold to Van Cleef & Arpels in 1969 after Daya took her own life in 1965. The piece fetched around 10% more than its highest price estimate of between $6 to $8 million at Christie's magnificent jewel sale.
Are you making the most of the longer stretch of pleasant autumn weather? It looks to be a repeat of yesterday's afternoon warmth, feeling more like early autumn than late fall. Today is also an orientation day for Suneung test takers. The warming trend continues through Suneung Day tomorrow, with afternoon rain in the forecast from western parts of Korea. Pack a small umbrella on the way to the test site tomorrow morning. Rain will start from the west tomorrow afternoon, spreading nationwide by nightfall. 5 to 30 millimeters of rain is in the forecast, and certain provinces in Jeju Island will receive heavier rainfall on Friday. Now, today will be a partly sunny one for most regions, and Seoul and Daejeon will be topping out at 20 degrees Celsius. Gwangju and Busan will get up to 21 degrees Celsius with decent air quality nationwide. Now, Sunday's rain in the capital and Gangwon-do will bring a sharp drop in temperatures next week. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time.